Hello guys and welcome back. So let's move on to talk about another topic here, which is how to create fur for rag, and which is this guy here. Okay, now we're gonna use a system called XGen to do that. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is Control-1 to just isolate this piece and take a look at the UV. Make sure that you do have UV. Okay, otherwise it's not gonna work. Okay, and then you just need to go grab the faces. That's gonna be these guys. Okay, maybe I can control right mouse button, grow to grow it twice. Okay, so that's gonna be the faces. I want to grow my fur. And we go to generate and then go for create interactive grooming splines. Okay, now go to the settings. Okay, I call the thing rag fur. Okay, that's the name of the XGen. And here the only thing I did differently is the length should be 4 and the others should be the same. Maybe I can change density back to 1. Yeah, that's better. So that should be it. So let me go ahead and hit apply. Okay, and then you can see a bunch of hair getting created here. Okay, all right. So you go to the workspace and change your workspace to XGen interactive grooming. Okay, so that you have the interactive grooming editor here, and you have the attribute editor, the 2 settings, and you have the channel box and outliner also here. Okay, so that's basically what we have for now. Okay, I think I can make it I don't know, wider. Okay, so maybe I don't need a whole lot of fur, but I need to have bigger fur. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do that. So I'm gonna go to the rag fur base. That's the density multiplier. It's now 1. I'm gonna say okay. I'm gonna go for 0.1 instead of 1. So maybe I don't know, 0.5 would be better. Okay, and then go to the rag fur here. Okay, and in the shape, scroll up all the way to the top. We have the width scale. I'm gonna change that to 1 to make them like wider. Okay, you can also see we're seeing this like cards that's already facing us, always facing us, like billboard cards. That's not what I like to see, so I'm gonna go to the primitive attribute and change that to tube shape, and I don't want to see it facing my camera. It's just gonna be these guys around. Okay, doesn't even matter which one I go for. Okay, and then the width ramp is something you can tweak also. If you want to make the tip thinner, you can do that. Of course, you can drag that over to something lower. You can see the difference. Okay. All right. So after that, we can maybe actually make it face camera so that way we can see better. Anyway, so we'll eventually go down here to the very bottom underneath Arnold. Okay, this section here, Arnold. You change the mode to stick. That's gonna render it as the cylindrical shape we're having here. Okay. Now, moving on to the next, we can go ahead and try to tweak the shapes. Okay, so we can go to the add modifier. We can maybe change, let's try the scale here. Okay, so grab the scale, then change the scale to make them go longer or shorter. That's basically a way to control their length. Okay, so if I want to change the length really quickly, that's the way you do it. All right. And then also we can go to, there is a sculpting layer here, and that's where we can sculpt the fur. So we can go ahead and use this sculpting tool, and underneath XGen we can start tweaking the shape in whatever way we want. So like we can, basically sculpting it like this. All right. So that way we have a better idea on how things are gonna look like. We have full control as an artist. Okay. So we can just, quickly draw out. It doesn't have to be all sculpted. We can add modifiers and procedurally make it happen like this, but I would like to define it myself first. Like I wanted to sculpt it like really quickly, just define some of the variations, not just on the edge but in the middle also. I want a lot of like variations, so just click and drag to add those variations. Okay, and sculpting is not just for the shape only. Like if we're sculpting and we are saying, okay, they're equally long, so maybe I want to make some variation on that part. Okay, So to be able to do that, we can use other brushes. Like this is the sculpting brush. Once you're in the sculpting mode, you can hold down the, let me check that guy back a little bit. Holding down Shift and right mouse button, there is a lot of brushes. So we can go to the lens brush. Okay, and you can click and drag. You can see you're making them longer. That's too much longer. So you can go to the two settings, of course, and let me change it to increment to 0.1 instead. So that way I can click and drag to add some more lens, or I can hold down Control to reduce lens. That way I can, add a lot of variations on the lens also to whatever way I want. Okay, so that's a lot of things we can do here. So all those things can also be controlled by using maps, but I would like to sculpt it myself because I think that's more, artistically driven rather than using maps. So I'm just gonna do it myself like this. Add some variation on the edge, of course. Okay. All right. Something like this. Okay, just to make it different. And make my brush bigger. I'm just drag left and right in different areas to give them some more variation. I don't want to drag them down though, so I need to drag them back up. Like that one is going down, I guess, too much. Okay, so this is basically the base variation you want to artistically driven, right? You want to direct it the way you want it to be. So basically adding those variations yourself. And then after this, we can use procedural way to break out to do the rest of the work because this is pretty generic, right? So to break this up, we can use some of the nodes that we have here. Underneath the fur wrap, we can add modifiers, and there is a bunch of modifiers. You can see we used the scale before. Let's go for the noise. Okay, the noise will start adding noise to the fur. Okay, you can go to the attribute editor and tweak that noise. So we can say, actually, we need to grab the noise and do that. So first of all, we can change the magnitude to have more or less noise. Okay, and you can also see underneath the magnitude scale, you have this from root to tip change. So the noise will be primarily applied to the tip. If I were to drag the bottom up, also you can see the bottom are also having the noise affected. Okay, so that noise can give us a lot of cool variations already. Okay, if we want to break this up even more, you can see that's what we're getting, right? We're still in sculpting, so this is non-destructive, so we can do our sculpt. The noise will be just applied to the structure after our sculpting result. Okay, because this is like a Photoshop layering system. Okay, so that means that system is based on from bottom to up. So whatever you did here in the sculpting, you can see the noise is above it. So you never will be able to smooth out the noise because it's actually after the sculpting. So also that does the scale. All right, cool. So at any point, if you think, okay, I want more density, you could do that. Back here to the base, you can change the density back to 1, and suddenly you have all the high density fur back. Okay, and just be aware that if you have too much, your performance may get low based on of course, your system. Like, do you have a good graphic card? Because XGen is based on graphic card, is hardware driven. Okay. All right. Okay. We can also do one more trick here to add one more thing. Of course, you can see now after the noise, they're having this chunky, jaggedy lines. That's just because they're not having enough, let's say, resolution, right? Now we could tweak that. Okay, so here let's see, the resolution part should be the CV counts. That's the 5 CV count. That's how much edge they have down the lens, or how much loop they have down the lens. So we can change that to 10 to crank up, and then we just rebuild, and that way you can see we're getting more variations. Now what I can see is maybe I'm cranking up the noise too much. So I'm gonna go back to the noise and lower down the magnitude. All right. Okay, I can also tweak the frequency so that it's not having too much of a smaller curving. Yeah, that's what I like more. Cool. All right. And we can further enhance this by adding a clump modifier. Okay, the clump modifier will create individual clumps for the fur. Okay, so if you go to the clump settings, you can take a look at what we have. Maybe we can drag that clump. Let's turn off the noise. We can see what's going on here. You can see now we're having like hairs like that's almost like they're trying to group together into individual clumps. Okay, and the density of the clump is determined by going back to the clump actually. Let's take a look at the clump settings. You can see we're having full clump. That's the shape of the clump. If you scroll down, that's going to be the clump density. So if I change that to like 0.5, we'll have bigger clumps. Okay, maybe we can change the shape of the clump so we can see what it does. You can see it's basically making the clump bigger in the middle. So a lot of cool things we can do here, right? So I'm thinking maybe the density can be even smaller. So let me change that to 0.25. Here we do have a lot of, like you can see now we can see more like a visible clump. So here we just have a lot of like trial and error. Like you can even make the clump spread out if you do desire to do so. You can see the clumping are basically spreading out more than trying to clump together. That's basically another route you can go. Okay, or you can tighten them up, whatever way you feel like that's what you want to do, right? And then combine that with the noise, we can get a lot of cool stuff. So in this case, I'm going to drag the clump below the noise so that I will apply noise afterwards. That way the noise will do more breakup. Okay, all right. So I guess that should be the things, unless we need different texture, right? So to do that, we can go grab the outliner and grab the rug fur and right click, holding down right mouse button, assign new material, and then we can look for Arnold AI standard hair. Okay, this is going to apply a hair material on it. I'm going to call this guy rug fur. Okay, all right, I'm going to drag it up, rug fur material. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the setting here. The melanin is going to be the color settings. If you hit 6, I don't really see it actually. Let me drag that back to 0. This one is basically mimicking real life hair color. That's not what I want, so I'm going to turn it off. That means the base color will take control. So I can go to the base color and load an image. Now because my underneath geometry here, let's take a look at that. So this underneath geometry is using this kind of like texture, so I want to apply that also to my rug. So let me take a look at that. That should be in the universal material, and yeah, that's the rug material. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the rug fur material, which is gonna be here. If I grab this guy and look for it, okay, select it and add it to the graph. Okay, and then I'm gonna minimal strike the rug new JPEG to the base color so that I'm connecting the same color to the fur material, so that way you can see our fur is adapting the color underneath. Okay, more or less. You can kind of like you're able to see it more or less. Okay. Also, for the material, I'm going to say, okay, I want it to be actually pretty rough, so I'm going to drag that up to 1. Okay, and then let me turn off that shifting, because I'm basically making something more closer to just simple fabric. So I could have used the hair AI standard surface, but I think the hair has the better color combination. Okay, so also if you wanted to say we wanted to go for a complete route of, using the basic diffuse map, we can lower down the base and we can connect that texture to the diffuse part. So diffuse back to 1, and then we can load that image also into the diffuse color. And this is going to give us a much closer result, like just very simple fabric kind of like texture. Okay, now you can see the benefit of using XGen is that all the flexibility that parameters exposed to you to do whatever change you feel like appropriate, and you can visualize it in a viewport because it's driven again by the graphic card, so it's able to do that. If you're using CPU to calculate this, it should already be like hurdling, and it's not even able to give you a very consistent performance at all. Okay. All right. So I think that's it. So let's take a look at how the render looks like. So I'm gonna go to turn on the render gate. Okay. Oh. Let me see. Do I have material for these guys? I do have. Actually, I did a material for that. This one doesn't have a material, so assign new material. No, the external surface. I'm gonna call this guy curtain holder material. Okay, and this one I'm gonna go, either I can go to preset and choose the chrome and replace it. And you can see it's using a basic PBR workflow. So we have the base color, metallic, and roughness. You use those three colors and you don't need to change anything else. This is totally PBR. So base color, metallic, roughness, and underneath geometry block map. That's the total PBR workflow. And I'll of course give you more traditional control. You can change the color of the specularity if you wanted to do that. But you know, I think this is all I need. So yeah, that's it. So I'm gonna go here and start doing our render. Actually, you cannot change the color of the specular. The PBR workflow does not do that. The color determines it then. So which is actually a very interesting physically based model. Doesn't give you all the flexibility, but it's accurate because the different color of the metal determines their specularity and LR. So you don't need to define it. Anyway, so I'm gonna go here and take a render here. Go to Ono. I'm gonna click on this render button and see what I have here. Okay, so I have someone there already earlier, but let's take a look at this time. I'm gonna go holding down Shift and drag to mark that area and see how the render looks like. Okay. Now this may take some time, so hit the render actually. So I'm gonna pause the video until this render is done. Alright, so the render is done. You can see this is how the result looks like. You can see we have those first rendered nicely. Okay, now this, let's take a look at if I can make it brighter by going to the exposure here. Okay, and then drag it up. Okay, you can see what we have over here. Okay. Alright, so that's basically how you create carpet. It's a little dark. One thing we could do, of course, back here to 0. So here is that we were using the base material more or less because we use diffuse. If you want it to be brighter, you could try to enable the hair part again. So back here to the material, if I can just grab this guy, go to attribute editor, and then right click here and choose the rug for material here. Okay, and then we can go to the diffuse and turn that off. So we're not using diffuse, we're using the base color. Okay, now those two are actually very different. This base color is telling it to use the mechanic inside of the hair system, so that it does in render it's more like hair. The diffuse is more like rendering it as a base material. So it's your choice to either use base color or the diffuse. Okay, so let me turn that on, and then we can click here to add a snapshot. So we have this one as comparison, and let me just hold on Shift and drag to mark that area one more time and do a render. Okay. All right, let's see if it's rendering. Not sure. Oh yeah, that's rendering. You can see when I drag this again, it's already feels like it's a little bit brighter because this particular fur material does render things more like hair, and what hair does is that it has multiple specularities. Its main color is from specularity, and it is also having scattering inside of it, so you have light goes in, it scatters around, so generally speaking you have a little bit more brightness in it. So for thin fabric it should have similar appearance, so you can use the base color setting instead of using diffuse to get that more furry look. Okay, so XGen of course it's used not just for hair, it can be used for like a lot of stuff, like anything you can procedurally populate. So you can assign material, so it's pretty cool. We're using interactive grooming, but you could try to use that traditional like XGen editor. That one is more powerful because it does have more modifiers and utilities that the interactive grooming doesn't have. But from what I have heard, it's gonna be moved. All those things are gonna be moved to the interactive grooming eventually, and interactive grooming is more stable and more artistic driven. So I would think that's gonna be the ultimate final kind of like ultimate tool to use XGen, but we'll have to wait for newer versions to see it updated. But you can see the result here, right? It's gonna be very different. All right, cool. So that's gonna be another topic, which is creating fur for carpet. You can use that maybe on other fabric like the curtain, or maybe on the fabric somewhere else, but they can be done exactly the same way. All right, cool. Thanks for watching. See you next time.